Hey guys, my name's Bintt and today we are in Black Tapestry Tattoo in London, and today I'm going to be showing you how to tattoo a Dotwork Mandala. Let's go. Alright guys, so we're getting into the stencil now. My client has already shaved his leg, but there's a few little extra bits that I'm just going to go over. So I've just got a little bit of Dettol on the kitchen roll and just going to shave away at the top a little bit. He's done a pretty good job, so it's not too much to actually take off. Perfect. You just bring your foot to the edge a little bit as well, please, bro. Just keep your leg like shoulder width apart a little bit, basically. Yeah. Alright, so I'm just going to get a marker. We want to kind of get it to line up with the top of this triangle. And I never go straight up. I kind of always go up towards the hip bone, which is just a little bit out from the center. So I'm going to kind of use that as the center line. Just make sure the area is dry. And I just want to align the stencil up with these little dots that we put there. Okay, and then just going to draw a couple of guidelines on the top and the bottom. We're using Aloe Stencil Premium for this. Just get a little bit on my hand. And just make sure it's over every area of the skin. You don't want the skin to be too wet, so just make sure it's a little bit kind of tacky to the touch. Okay, so I hold the top lines first, get those in line, and then the bottom ones. And then just tap the center of the stencil. And then just push out to the left. And then to the right. And I like to just get a wet paper towel and just dab everywhere, just to make sure the whole stencil transfers onto the skin and you're not missing any bits. Okay, that's pretty good. Perfect, looks pretty good. Okay guys, so for the tattoo today, I'll be using FK Irons Flux. I've got a Dan Cube in Sidewinder. I'll be using Stella cartridges, lockdown needles, I'll be using Panthera ink, and I've got a bit of Yayo processed butter and also Yayo cleansing foam. Alright guys, so we're getting into the tattoo now. Gonna start with a 0.25 bug pin, 5-round liner from Stella Killering. I use this to do all the dot work areas, outline them at least. We'll also be doing some of the finer line work with this as well. I have my machine running at about 8 volts. Okay, so to start, I just dip into the Panthera Dark Sumi and just slowly go around the outside of each little shape. Prefer to use a tighter needle and a lighter shade of ink just to outline everything, so that then later down the line you don't get to a shape. Say for example you want to fill it in with a light shade of ink, but you've dotted the outline in black. Obviously when that heals you'll see that, so I always prefer to just dot everything in the lighter shade and the finer needle. I don't usually have any green soap on my tissue to begin with. Just like to keep it dry. That way there's less chance of rubbing the stencil away as you're tattooing. I don't like to put my needle in too deep when I'm doing the outline either. I just want quite a light dot around the edge. So if I'm going to do a bit of a fade from dark to light, you don't want like a darker outline around the shape. I'm going to switch to Panthera lining ink now. Just do this thin outline around the edges. Pretty much just keep the speed at 8 volts for the entire tattoo, don't really change it. I usually always pull the finer lines toward me. Try and get it done in like one big continuous line, unless the ink runs out. Then back onto the dark sumi to carry on dotting the outline in. Constantly using this yayo process butter just to keep the skin nice and calm, avoid any redness. I always like to use my left thumb to kind of rest my right index and middle finger against. I feel like it just gives it a little bit more stability. There's less chance of wobbling the line, putting the dot work outside the lines or something. So I've used the flux now for maybe 6 or 7 years. I use it for dot work mostly and finer line stuff. I use it for a little bit of shading as well. I just like how light it is. The battery lasts forever as well. I've never had any issues with the machine. I've never had any problems with the motor or the battery or anything like that. It's been really, really good. So it's quite a versatile machine. I don't think I'll ever convert fully to using pens. I still think there's some things that other machines can do better than pen machines. But I appreciate having this for the convenience. So I'll use this probably for, I don't know, 3s, 5s and 7s. And then yeah, any kind of like size mag for shading really. Like I've pushed 49s with this before as well and it works fine. But yeah, for driving bigger lines, I prefer to use my Dan Cubins. They just seem to get the line in first time, quickly, effortlessly. But yeah, I do love using this flux. Alright, so I'm switching up to my Dan Cubin now. This is a Sidewinder V7, I believe. Set it up with a lockdown straight 9 needle. So I have it constantly running all the time. This just helps to avoid any spitting. I like to get the needle in, keep it at the same depth, just drag it at a steady speed. So I like to get the needle into the skin, keep it at the same depth, and then just drag it at the same speed the entirety of the line. I'm running this 6 volts. I always use steel tubes and grips. I like the extra weight, helps keep the machine balanced. Helps me keep control of it a little bit. So again, I use my thumb to kind of steady my fingers and then begin the line again. I always prefer to drag my lines as well. I think there's less chance of blowing out if I drag them. So like you have to be a little bit more careful if you were to push the needle. So this machine's the Dan Cubin V7 featherweight as well. So the weight of the grip on the front, it kind of counterbalances it. Also the clip cord is super thin and lightweight. So all the control is where your fingers are. So you don't really get, it's quite easy to get a solid straight line, I find, because all of the control is right where your fingers are. You just get much more clean, solid lines. It just hits the needling so much harder than a pen machine does. And that's why you can kind of do your lines a little bit quicker. You don't have to come back over them. If I was to try and push this with, I don't know, like a bishop liner, for example, you could do it, but it'd just take longer, I feel. And I don't know, in my experience, the lines just kind of heal a bit better with a claw machine and proper needles on the bar. I always try to drag the line towards me if I can. I have a lot more control over it when it's kind of up to down rather than left to right. Yeah, I feel like you can just sink a needle with ease with these machines. You don't even barely have to push on it, you just let the tip just go in and yeah, you get like a perfect line every time. So I've been using Panthera ink for 5 or 6 years now. I started just using the XXX tribal stuff. I found that was one of the darker blacks that I'd used. It always came back healed, super solid. It also goes in really well. And then they offered to sponsor me a few years ago, and after that I started using their liner ink as well, which is a little bit more watered down, I guess. So it kind of goes in a little bit easier. So I've been using that for my line work ever since, and yeah, I like it a lot. I usually use a combination of their liner ink and a dark sumi for most of my mandala pieces. When you put the ink in, it looks a similar shade, but once it heals, you get quite a contrast between the dark sumi and the black. I've tried doing this with a light sumi and a black, but I just feel that there's too much of a contrast, and the lighter areas are just a little bit too light than what I'd like them to be. So yeah, I stick to the black and the dark sumi. So I switched back up to the flux to do a little bit of dot work on the centre of the mandala now, using the dark sumi again. I'm still using the same bit of tissue that I started with. Still kind of dry patting and trying not to dry wipe, but yeah, just patting the ink away rather than drying it, rather than wiping it, sorry. Alright, I'm switching back to the Panthera liner ink now. Just want to do a few straight lines using this bug pin type 5. Just want to keep the line at the same depth and a constant speed. When I'm doing the more finer line stuff, I tend to literally just let the tip of the needle graze the skin. Don't want to kind of push it in too hard. It's a lot easier to get a blowout, I find, with a finer needle. Right, back onto the Dan Cuban now. Literally just grazing the needle on the top of the skin. The machine's doing the rest of the work with it. Just want to be careful when you're lying in the middle of a mandala not to cross over that middle line too many times with your needle. Otherwise you'll end up chewing it up and get a bad heel right instead. get a fresh tissue. I'm just gonna wipe this down. We're about halfway through the outline there. Just gonna touch up a couple of little lines here and there. So back onto a type 5 with the Panthera liner ink. Just gonna go around the edges, not too deep, consistent speed. Just gonna keep putting a bit more of this processed butter on the centre just to calm the skin down. I think a nice pale leg is getting a bit angry. Back onto the cubing now with the straight 9. The way that I think you achieve a dark saturation, it's probably a lot to do with the ink. I guess a lot of it is the technique as well. I suppose it's just making sure that the skin is saturated without being overworked, and then that way it will heal as best it can and retain as much of the darkness of the ink as possible. Yeah, I don't think there's one specific way of getting a really dark heel. I think you just have to have a lot of different techniques. A lot of different things have to all work together at the same time. Yeah, I feel like this style of tattooing, I know it looks best when you have a lot of high contrast in areas as well. So you got your blacks with some like dark or light greys as well. It kind of makes the blacks pop a little bit more, I guess. Yeah, a steady hand helps with nice solid dark lines. And just consistency, I think. Just keeping the needle at the same depth, same speed. And yeah, not overworking the skin. That way it can heal as best as possible. I think that's the best way to get the darkest heel. Yeah, when I'm doing the line work, I try and have the needle pretty much 90 degrees, or maybe like 80 degrees. I don't really tend to kind of do it at 45-degree angle, especially if you're kind of going around a curve. If you've got the needle at a bit more of an angle, you might see the size of the line kind of widen as you go around that curve, just due to the angle of the needle. So I try and just keep it at about a 90-degree angle, and then you know your line is going to be the same width as the needle. Also make sure the skin's nice and tight. That way you can just get your line in one pass. You don't have to come back to it and go over the same area twice. I've always used this size grip. I've been using steel tubes the entire time I've tattooed. I've tried it with plastic ones, but I just prefer the weight behind them. I used to have smaller grips, like thinner ones, but I felt like my hand would start to ache after a while. So then I just got these little rubber cases to just go around the grip. I don't know, I think it's maybe like, I don't know, 40 mil at a guess or something like that. Maybe 30 mil, 35 mil, but that fits into my hand perfectly. I kind of only hold the tip of it as well, I guess. It doesn't even like kind of rest on the back of my hand. I'm just holding it with my thumb, my middle finger and my index finger. Also like the weight of the machine against the weight of the grip. It just helps to keep everything balanced and forward. That way it helps you with keep the line solid and stable. I like using these grips from Moth as well. These little foam grips around the flux. They're kind of like really nice fit into your hand, help you control the needle and the machine a little bit easier. I used to just wrap a bit of tissue and grip tape around it, but yeah, much prefer these foam grips from Moth. Cool, I think that's the outline done. Right, so I'm gonna start with the dot work around the edges. I'll do all the darker areas first, so that'll be using the liner black. For this, I'm gonna use a 7 round liner from Stella. That's a 0.3 millimeter, so it's a little bit larger than the Type 5. I prefer to kind of, when I'm doing the black areas of the mandala, I tend not to dot them in, I tend to just kind of scribble them in almost. It does it a lot quicker. Yeah, it does it a lot quicker, and it kind of looks like dot work anyway. So rather than doing each individual dot, you just get through the piece a little bit faster. So start here, and just kind of like scribble the black in. Don't really take the needle out of the skin either. I've still got the machine running at 8 volts as well. So you can be a little bit messy with this, it doesn't really matter. Wipe the ink away and see if there's any bits that you kind of missed. So yeah, just put the needle in and kind of just wiggle it around all over the place basically. You can afford to be a bit messy with it because again, it's meant to look like dot work. So I always tend to do the blacks first, just out of a force of habit. You just have to pay attention and make sure that you don't accidentally do a lighter area and fill it in black. So I'll always use a 7 for the black areas and a Type 5 for the lighter areas. The lighter areas I'll do with the dark grey wash. I'm a little bit more kind of precise when I do the lighter areas as well. But yeah, with the darker areas, just kind of scribble it in and get it in. Just make sure the skin's really tight as well. So again, I've got my left thumb just touching my middle finger, just to help keep the machine a little bit more steady and stable. You can use like your thumb to kind of push your middle finger a little bit. And it just helps to just keep you a little bit more steady. I kind of just go, I don't know, left and right, back and forth, up and down. We kind of zigzag motion when I'm filling in these darker areas. There's not really any kind of particular method that I do. So yeah, kind of zigzag, I guess. But yeah, just keep the needle in the skin. Don't really take it back out. Just kind of like bounce it along. Yeah, so when I'm doing the darker dot work, I'll always kind of, yeah, scribble it in and just kind of make the dots a lot closer together, a lot more compact. And then when I kind of use the lighter shade, I'll use a tighter needle and I'll kind of separate them a little bit more as well, just so it kind of helps with the contrast a little bit. In this piece in particular, I'm not actually going to be doing any fades with the dot work. I'm just going to kind of be doing them like solid black and like solid grey wash. But if I were to do a fade, I'd probably just start with the dark grey wash, like start in a corner, and then kind of have the dots quite compact and close together. And then as you come away from the corner, just kind of spread them out a little bit more, and then keep spreading them out a bit more and more as you kind of come to the end of the little shape you're filling them in. And then I'd probably just dip into some black and just go back to the very beginning where you started and just kind of fill that little area in a little bit more with some black, just to help with that contrast. You could technically do the whole piece just with black ink if you wanted to, and just kind of spread the dots out to make some areas a bit lighter. But I just prefer to work with 2 different shades, so that way you can still kind of keep your dots a little bit denser. But when they heal, because they're a lighter shade, obviously they'll be a little bit lighter. So it just looks a little bit, I don't know, like there's more coverage, I suppose. A type 5 is probably the smallest I'd go with my dot work. I don't really see the point of using a 3. It just takes forever, and the dots are so small, you just spend so much longer actually doing them. So yeah, type 5 is just as small as I'd go with my dot work. But I probably would go up to like dotting with a 9 if it was a larger piece. I'd probably use a combination of like either a 3 and a 5, or sorry, not a 3 and a 5, either a 5 and a 7, or a 7 and a 9. So if I'm kind of, I don't know, doing some dot work on a back piece, for example, I'd probably just use a 7 and a 9, and then smaller pieces like this, keep to a 5 and a 7. I don't really tend to either kind of do a line around the outside of the shape either and then fill it in. I'd rather just kind of like dot right up to the line. Sometimes you can be left with what looks like a line, and it's not the effect we're going for. I've seen some people kind of like, yeah, like kind of draw a line around the edge, but I prefer to just kind of, yeah, just dot right up to the line instead. So if this was just a mandala that was totally made up of dot work, when I'm filling it in, I usually start in the center. Again, doing all the black ones first. So I'd start in the center and then kind of work my way out to the edges. And that kind of helps you figure out what areas you want to fill in, what shades, and where you want to put your gradients. And so I never really know exactly how it's going to look when I start tattooing it. So that's why I prefer to start in the center and just get all the blacks in first. You can kind of see if you're doing it a little bit, I don't know, maybe too dark, if you just start with all the blacks. Yeah, it kind of helps me balance the piece out a little bit more, I think. I just kind of start from the center, work out, and just start with the blacks. That's all the darker areas done for the moment. Okay, so we're switching over now to the Type 5 again. I'm gonna do the lighter areas. So I'm doing this with the dark grey wash, Panthera dark grey wash. I'm gonna leave these larger areas for last. I'm gonna do those dark. So these come around and do these smaller areas. So when I'm doing the lighter areas, I'll kind of do each dot individually and try and keep them spread out about the same. So whereas I was kind of just like putting it in and wiggling it around with the black. I'm a little bit more kind of particular with the lighter areas. So when you look, you can kind of see each individual dot. I'm not too precious about having every single one spaced out exactly the same distance. Like, it's just a bit of a waste of time, I find. As long as it kind of looks good from a few feet away, that's kind of what I'm looking for. So over time, they'll all kind of heal and bleed together a little bit anyway. So to me, I'm not too worried about having them each single one the same distance apart. Again, I've just got my left thumb, I'm using it as a bit of an anchor point on my right middle finger, just to kind of keep everything a little bit more stable. I kind of do the dots the same that I do when I'm just kind of packing the black dots. I kind of just zigzag back and forth almost. Try not to go too fast, otherwise instead of getting a dot, you're kind of left with like a bit of a kind of elongated dot. If your movement with your hands too quick, you'll kind of like drag the needle at a bit of an angle, so you'll get a kind of like, yeah, kind of dragged out dot. So you got to just kind of keep the hand movement the same. I'm just going back and forth in a kind of rough zigzag motion almost. And kind of wipe the ink away and just check that there's no kind of big gaps or anything left. If there is, just go back and fill them in. Like I say, you could do this with just black ink as well, but I kind of like the contrast when it heals. It's just a little bit lighter. I have tried this before with the light sumi wash as well, but it just heals too light for me personally. You want to try and keep the needle depth the same every time you put it in the skin, otherwise you'll have areas where there's like, you've gone a little bit too deep and there's quite clearly some like bigger, darker kind of dotted areas. So yeah, just try and keep the depth the same every time you do a fresh dot. If I'm doing, say for example, if I'm doing just a purely Dotwork Mandala, then I'll get out the tribal black and the dark grey sumi. But if I'm doing a mandala that's a mixture of like line work and dot work, then I'll just get out the line work black and the dark grey sumi. It's just laziness, to be honest. I think probably. I don't think it matters massively. Like I wouldn't pack black with the liner black. I'd use the triplets, but I would kind of do black dot work with a liner black. I'm just going to put a little bit of back tin on there for a second. Going to come round next and do a little bit of shading on that dot work just to give it a little bit of depth, kind of like draw the eye into the centre. Try not to use too much back tin, because then the client gets used to it and they just want it all the time. So I'll use it a little bit when I'm kind of doing bits of shading. I wouldn't whip shade over dotting. I mean you could kind of like lower the voltage of the machine to like 4 or 5 volts or something, and then maybe just kind of like move the needle around a little bit, but you wouldn't get that individual dot look of it. I feel like kind of like pepper shading or whip shading or whatever, it's better for larger areas, or if you're even kind of doing like a bit of almost realism but using like a kind of pepper shading technique. It's quite difficult to like actually pepper shade inside this little shape. it just look a little bit messy, I think, which is why I probably prefer to just do the dots more deliberately. I would do kind of pepper shading if I was doing a drop shadow maybe or something like that, but yeah, for this specific piece, I'm going to use like a 15 curve mag from Stella, and I'm going to use like the light Sumi from Panthera. So I haven't changed the voltage on this, I'm going to keep it at 8 volts, and then where I've drawn my little guidelines, I kind of just zigzag left and right, sink the needle, and then just flick away. So going a bit deeper at first, and then a little bit lighter. I kind of do a mixture of quick and slow kind of whips. So I'll start quicker at the beginning where I want it a bit darker, and then kind of slow it down as we come away from the edge. Basically, yeah, just so go a little bit deeper, and then as you come out, kind of as if you're scooping almost. And then yeah, just kind of like brush it over the top of the skin as you come away. That's what I do anyway. And we'll do the same here. Go left and right just to give a bit of a line. And then just dig it a bit deeper. Just little small shallow brushes. And then just getting slightly longer and slower. It's just unnecessary, I think, to actually put this line in with a liner. I don't really need one there. But then, yeah, I guess I do kind of make a line with the edge of the mag, but I think that's just to give me a bit more of a solid edge to work off when I do my shading. I'm not really sure why I do it. I think it's just something I've done without realising. I have the needle hanging out about 2mm maybe, not too far. So just go over the area that you want darkest quite a few times, and just get a bit softer the further away you come. Don't push the needle in as hard. Still using the light Sumi. Got another little guideline here. So kind of just use the very tip of the needle, make a bit of an edge, and then just get a little bit more deeper and deeper into the skin. It's best not to go too deep at first. You can always like come back to it. But if you start off and you go too deep to begin with, you can't really come back from that. So loads of processed butter to keep it moisturised, stop the skin from becoming red. So use the tip of the needle, like quick short strokes, and then slower, longer strokes, but not quite as deep. And I'll sometimes come back and kind of just brush over the top as well, just to smooth it out a little bit. Might just come into the corner and just darken that up a little bit as well. Alright, so same again. Got 8 different points of this mandala, so just got to repeat that another 7 times. So I'll go like left and right to create a bit of a line, and then shorter, deeper strokes, and then slower, kind of softer strokes to blend it out into the skin. That's the thing about tattooing mandalas, there's a lot of repetition. So there's 8 sides to this, so everything you have to do it 8 times. But the final piece is always worth it, I think. I don't think I'm a very patient person in general, so people are always confused when I do this kind of work, because it does obviously take a lot of patience, but I think this is the only thing that I could do for this long and not get kind of bored or tired of. Again, short, deep strokes, and then slower, longer, more deliberate. This is giving the illusion of 3 different layers. What gives the piece a bit of depth. I'm just adding a lot more processed butter, just don't want anything to dry out. Keep it nice and moist and keep the redness away. It's starting to come together now. Start off again, just little short, deep strokes, and then kind of just get a little bit softer and slower, longer strokes as you fade it out back into skin. The last little bits of shading now. Same again, just kind of go left and right to create a bit of an edge, and then just quickly push away, start the shading, and then once you've got the darkest part in, just do kind of slower, longer strokes just to smooth it out into the skin. Right, so that's all the shading done for the moment. Just going to go in now and finish the dot work in the centre, and then just tidy up anything that needs to be done, and then we're finished. I'll switch back down to the Type 5. We're going to go with the dark grey sumi, and I'm just going to start at the point of this petal here. I think I'll do a little bit of a fade on this actually, so we'll do the dot work a little bit denser, a little bit closer together. I'm just using the Type 5 here. And then as a kind of come away from the point, start to spread the dots out a little bit wider, just getting further and further apart. So I come away from that point, still going in that kind of like zigzag fashion, and just wipe the ink away, and then just take another look, see where you kind of need to put a few more dots just to make that fade a little bit softer. Kind of do it quite randomly. Just sharpen up the tip there, and then just literally put a flick of black right in the tip. And because I've still got black ink on the needle, I'll just do that at the beginning of the next one. And I'll dip the needle in the dark grey, and then just do the same again. So have the dots a little bit closer together at the beginning, still kind of zigzagging back and forth. Dip back into the grey, and just do the dots further and further apart. Try and keep them the same depth every time. I'll keep the needle the same depth every time. Wipe the ink away, and still got the dark sumi ink in the needle. Just go and try and fade that out a little more softly. Same again, just start with a dark grey sumi, the dots very close together. Alright, back to the 7 liner. finish it off. I'm gonna do kind of a bit of black dot work inside these little bits. I don't kind of want to colour it in or scribble it in like I did before. Just kind of want to dot it just so there's a little bit more skin showing through. I'm just going to fill these little bits in the centre just to kind of give that extra little bit of depth in the middle. Still got the 7 liner and Black Tapestry lining ink. Just kind of like shade over the bit right in the corner, just so that's a little bit darker. Just one last thing I want to do with this 7 liner is just kind of go around this edge and just neaten it up a little bit. So I am actually going to kind of line it a little bit. So this is the edge that's got the kind of drop shadow shading coming from it. Just want to neaten it up and get rid of any kind of like rogue dots that are sticking out of the way. Just kind of going around now, just making sure everything's tight and not missed anything. Just one little tiny bit of that line that doesn't look perfect. And that's the tattoo complete, guys. Just gonna put a little bit of the Skinworks soothing liquid on there, just to calm it down for 10 minutes, and then you can see the final result. We're going to get into the aftercare now. We are going to put some of the yayo processed butter on there, just give it a nice thick coat. This is just so the tattoo armour doesn't stick to your leg. But I'll put the tattoo armour on now, and if you just leave it on overnight until you wake up in the morning, this butter should stop the tattoo kind of fusing with the pad. Let's take these off a second. So yeah, leave this on overnight. In the morning, just take it off, jump in the shower. Nice hot shower, a little bit of on an unscented soap or shower gel or something if you've got it. Pat it dry, and after that, mate, you don't want to do anything to it really. Just let it dry heal for like 4 or 5 days. It's a bit close. Yeah, let it dry heal for like 4 or 5 days. Wash it a couple of times a day. And then after the 4th or the 5th day, I'll give you a little pot of aftercare. It's just the yayo aftercare. Just start putting that on it 2 or 3 times a day. And yeah, that's it pretty much. Any problems, you know where to find me. All right guys, that's a wrap. Thank you for watching me tattoo today. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learnt something from it as well. If you have any questions, just drop something down below in the comments and I'll get back to you if I can. That's me done. I'm gonna go and listen to some Taylor Swift.